Hey guys, how you going? My name is Dom, and in today's video we're going to be using HTML and CSS in order to create a button which has support for a loading animation. Okay, so this right here is going to be the finished product. As we can see, it is currently a fairly straightforward button, but if I was to click on the button, we can see it transforms into a state which has a loading spinner right there. So of course this will indicate to your user that something is saving or something is loading, whatever it might be. It is going to indicate that something is happening. Okay, so this right here is very easy to create using only HTML and CSS. So let's go inside this tab right here and of course begin from scratch to create what we just saw. Okay, so going inside the text editor right here, the first step is going to be to create a new button with a type here of something like button. You can of course use type submit. It's going to be totally up to you. And inside here though, let's add a class of button. So of course this right here, this class will allow us to of course target this button in CSS. Okay, so going inside the actual button itself, let's add a new element right here, a new span tag with a class of button __ text. And inside here, we can of course specify the button's text. So we can say, for example, save changes right here. If I was to save this, we get something like this in the browser. So now let's use CSS to of course take this and transform it into something like this. So going inside the style tag up here, let's target the class of button, and the first thing to do, and a very important thing to do, is going to be to apply a position here of relative. We're going to see why this right here is really important later on, but essentially it is crucial to getting the actual spinner to work. Okay, so we can also apply here a padding of 8px and 16px. We can say a background of #009579. We can say a border of none, and the same thing goes for an outline. We can also say here a border radius of 2px to give us slightly rounded corners. And lastly, we can say a cursor of pointer to of course give that feedback to the user. So now saving this right here is going to give us something like this. So of course looking not too bad so far, but if I was to press on the button, we can see there is no user feedback. So let's make the background color darker when pressing on the button. So going back inside here, let's target the button, then we can say :active, and basically whenever the button is active or it is pressed on, we can just say a background here of a darker color, for example 007A and then 63. So now saving this will give us something like this. If I was to press on the button, we get this right here. Okay, so now let's move on to styling up the actual text. So let's target the button __ text class right here, and we can say first off a font of bold, then 20px, and then we can say something like quicksand and then sans serif. Okay, so obviously right here I'm just setting I'm setting my font weight, then I'm setting the font size, then of course I'm setting the font family. Okay, so we can also say here a color of white, and lastly we can say transition all at 0.2 seconds. So we're going to see how this transition works very shortly, but for now let's save this and we get something like this in the browser. Okay, so now let's move on to of course creating that loading spinner and of course that loading state in general. Okay, so the first thing to modify here is going to be the text. As we can see in the previous example, the text is going to fade away and of course fade back in when moving to and from that loading state. Okay, so let's go inside here and we're going to add a class right here. We're going to add a class to the button, and it's going to be button -- loading. So this button -- loading class, whenever you add this class to the button, we expect it to transform into the state which looks like this, of course the loading state. Okay, so that is how the button is going to work. Okay, so now if I was to say right up here button -- loading, then button __ text, so basically targeting the text whenever the button is loading, we can say right here a visibility of hidden. Okay, so what this does is, if I save this, we can see it is going to hide the text but also keep its actual size as if it is still there. And that is important to ensure that the button doesn't, change size. If I was to make this, for example, a display of none, we can see the button actually changes in size. So of course, a visibility of hidden won't have this problem. Now, we can combine this with opacity of 0. So now, essentially, we can see here, with the combination of transition all at 0.2 seconds and this opacity, it is going to fade in and fade out. Okay, so with that being said, if I was to go into the developer tools here, and I just inspect the actual button, I can then remove the button -- loading class, and we can see the text fades back in. Okay, so we saw right there, if I was to then add the class back, so button -- loading, so now it's back into the loading state, we can see it fades away. So that is what the transition and the opacity of 0 is doing. Okay, so now let's move on to actually doing the loading spinner. Okay, so going back inside here, we can target button -- loading, and we're going to be using CSS pseudo elements to, of course, create that loading spinner. So if I say : after this right here, for those of you who don't know, it is going to create a virtual element inside CSS, which can be styled just like any other HTML element. Okay, so with that being said, let's add a content here of empty string, and this is a requirement in order to get it to display. We can also say here, a position of absolute. So this is where the position of relative right up here comes into play. So basically, with this combination, the relative and the absolute, it is going to allow us to position the actual spinner in essentially the center of the actual button. Okay, so for example, if I was to say width here of 16px and a height of also 16px and a background of red, for example, and I save this, we can see the actual spinner, or soon-to-be spinner, is in a very weird place. Okay, so I can move this to wherever I want. So for example, if I say top of 0 and a left of 0, it's going to move into the top left corner. And that is what, like I said, the position of absolute and the relative does. If I was to remove this relative, we can see it goes away differently. If I put it back, it is going to basically have the top and left in the context of the actual button itself. Okay, so how do we actually move this right here into the center? Well, we can basically do this. We can say top of 0, we can say left of 0, we can say a right of 0, and lastly we can say a bottom of 0, and we can also say a margin of order. So right here, this combination of rules will position this right here in the center, just like that. So now, essentially, we need to change this actual square into, of course, a loading spinner. So to achieve that, let's remove this background, and we can say right down here, a border of something like, let's do 5px, solid, and then transparent. Then we can say border top color, we can then say white. So right here, if I save this, we get something like this. Might actually make this 4px, make it a bit thinner. As we can see, we've got the square, and it's only got a top border. Okay, so now we can simply transform this into a circle, and it's going to give us that circle effect. So let's go inside here. We can say border radius, make this 50%, and now, like I said, it's going to be a circle just like this. So now it's going to be as easy as animating this circle. So right down here, we can specify a new keyframes, and we can say, for example, right here, button - loading - spinner. Okay, so now inside here, we can say from, and for the from, we can say transform, then rotate at 0 turn. Then we can say right down here 2, and 2, it's going to be 1 turn. So right here, what we're doing is basically specifying an animation. We're saying the animation is going to take the spinner from a 0 turn, so basically it's going to be the default right here, 0 turn, as it is right now, to a 1 turn. So from 0 to 1 whole turn, giving us that 360 spin. So now to apply the animation, we can say right here, animation, then we can say button - loading - spinner, as of course the animation name, then we can say 1 second, then is, and then infinite right here. So basically, the animation is going to take 1 second. We're going to have this timing function right here, and also it's going to run infinite amount of times. If I was to save this, we get this right here. As we can see, it is working perfectly fine. Now, you can of course customize this timing function to be, for example, you can say linear, and that will create a linear animation, something like that, if that is preferred by you. Personally, I like the ease one right here. So now, how do we actually use the loading class and of course make it turn from non-loading into loading? Well, we need JavaScript in order to toggle this class right here. So for example, we can actually go inside here, and for the button, as a demonstration, we can simply just say something like this. We can say on click. So when the button gets clicked on, we can just say this. So basically, this refers to the button itself. So we can say this dot class list dot toggle, then pass through here button dash dash loading. Okay, so basically, when you click on the button, it is going to toggle the existence of the button dash dash loading class. So now, if I was to click on it, we get, of course, the loading class right there. Do it again, and it goes away. So that's one example of how to use it. Obviously, it is not too practical. So a better example might be something like this, where basically, if I remove this on click right here, remove that, and then go inside the actual script tag right down here, I can firstly, for example, get a reference to the button. So I can say const btn equal to document.query selector, and I can say right here dot button to get the first button with a class of button right here. Then I can just say, for example, let's just do btn dot class list dot toggle. Then I can just say once again button dash dash loading, and of course now if I save this, it is going to straight away, it is going to apply this button loading class. So of course, in your JavaScript, you can change when this thing gets called. But basically, this line right here, this class list toggle line, is going to be what you want to use in order to, of course, set and unset your loading state. One last thing, you can actually force it. So for example, if I want to guarantee it is going to exist, I can just say add, so class list.add, it's going to add that class. I can then say also .remove, and that of course is going to remove that class right there. Okay, so I'll leave usage examples in the description or in the comment section below for you to look at, as well as the source code. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.